Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to a brand new video on the channel. Inside of today's video, I'm going to be giving you guys all of the best predictions and the best chance basically to get the Rage Quit Tara. So giving you guys my run through of all of the bracket, giving you guys my thoughts. I've done a lot of research on all the practices of the teams as well. Of course, this time around I'm not playing in it, but I feel like I've got a decent understanding, especially talking to a lot of pro players as well, as to who has a really good shot at winning the World Finals this time around. So yeah, I'll just be giving you my opinion. Of course, like it is Brawl Stars, you know, it literally depends on how people just turn up on the day. You know, there's other things probably I don't 100% know as well. Of course, a lot of people will be hiding their tactics. So first and foremost, you want to be heading to the event.brawlstars website. That's where you're going to be doing these predictions. A lot of people still don't really know where to go, but basically this is going to be the road. So you get a nice pin, you get, I think that's a profile icon, and then you get the Rage Quit Tara skins. So of course, with this, you know, you get your predictions. Already day one is available, so I'll be running through those pretty quickly, and then I'll be giving you guys my day two. So basically, day one is four, not quarterfinals, round of 16 matches. Then day two is the other four round of 16, and then day three is just everything after the quarterfinals. So basically, what happened last year is, say for example, if you actually got a result wrong in the round of 16, what you can do on day three is actually redo your predictions. So what I'll do, if I get any of them wrong, I'll probably put out a tweet, and then also on my community page my like new predictions, because of course I'm not going to get every single one right. There will be some upsets for sure, so you know, you don't have to 100% go with what I say, but definitely take my opinion as kind of something quite strong basically. So yeah, you basically got to interact, of course, throughout the games as well. There'll be like questions, I believe, like at the start of every game, there'll be like a question, like a fun trivia one, which if you've been watching esports literally the whole year, then I feel like you should have a good understanding of that. And then the big one, normally there's like an MVP kind of MPV vote at the end of every single game, and I think no matter what, you get 100 coins. Quote me if I'm wrong, but I know if you do get the right one anyways, you will get them 100 coins. Okay, so I'm going to be running through every single round of 16 match, giving you guys my thoughts with some decent analysis. So if you guys want to look at some stats yourself, head over to esports.brawlstars. You'll basically be able to see a lot of like the teams, also the rankings throughout the year, because of course that is pretty important, seeing how they fared off throughout the year. So first matchup is Zeta 1 versus Chasmac EU. So from the get-go, I feel like Chasmac EU are looking pretty weak in terms of scrims and also just in the EMEA region, whereas Zeta 1, they literally won mid-season invitationals. They won 4 grand finals out of 6 grand final appearances. They made every single monthly final. And then also, they are the previous world winners, and they've got a 52% scrim win rate, which I'll show that on the screen as well, with all of their different kind of, well, who they faced off against the scrims and their results. So I'll constantly be popping things up on the screen as we go along. Whereas Chasmac EU, well, also they finished off #1 East Asia, beating out Zeta 0, who are an insane team as well. Whereas Chasmac EU, they just scraped through, managing to get to the World Finals. Somewhat underrated team throughout EMEA. Sometimes they got some surprise results, but for me, again, they're just scraping through. They actually only made 1 grand final appearance. They did lose it. I believe it was actually a pretty close game. I think it was against Tribe Gaming EU, but again, within scrims, they've not been looking too hot. I'll pop this results on the screen now. They've got a 33% scrim win rate, which really isn't the best against fellow world teams. So they've also had a roster change mid-year. So for this one, I feel like I'll be with the majority here. I honestly feel like, you know, no hard feelings to Chasmac EU. They've got such a hard task at hand. You know, I won't be able to beat Zeta 1 even in my prime, and I feel like it's got to be like a 95% chance for Zeta 1 to win. I apologize to any Chasmac EU fans, but it's just the way it is. Okay, so for next matchup, we have Reply Totem versus Vatra Gaming. A lot of you guys probably onto Vatra because they've only recently made it to the competitive scene, but they're a really underrated team. Definitely one to look out for. I feel like this one is a really tough one. I've had a lot of discussions with pros, and I feel like this is honestly a 50-50, so don't kill me if I'm wrong on this one. I feel like my heart is telling me that Reply Totem will win, and then my head is saying Vatra Gaming. It's a tough one. So basically with Reply Totem, you can see They finished second overall. We've got some really good results so far throughout the EMEA season. As you can see, you know, we've got a decent roster with Maru, Mori and Joker. So they've had 6 monthly final appearances. I think they didn't make the first one. They made 2 grand final appearances and they won both of them. They're in really hot form at the moment. They're doing really well in ESL as well. They actually won an ESL LAN, so just going to show that they're good on LAN. And then also last year, I think Reply Totem finished, I think it was third/4th. These are just off the top of my head. I know they did really well at the last World Finals, facing off against Zeta, I believe, and yeah, they put up a good fight. So this is definitely a good LAN team. So one thing to note as well, they haven't had the best win rate in terms of scrims right now, which again, you know, it's only scrims practices and they may not be really showing all their, you know, laying all the cards on the tables, but you know, it's a little bit worrying. I've been speaking to some pros and they don't feel like Reply Totem is as strong as they once used to be, but again, they may be holding some things back, and when it comes down to LAN, that's where it all shows off. And then next up we have so the next one is Vatra Gaming. So Vatra Gaming, you know, they finished second above Stamina, which was would have been a big shock at the start of the year, right? And so far they've qualified for every single monthly final. They've made 3 grand final appearances and they've won 1, and they also finished second in their last monthly finals. So one thing with Vatra, they're actually only just reaching Paris right now, I believe, or yesterday. Unfortunately, in terms of practices, yesterday not many practices were had because the Wi-Fi was down in their hotel. So yeah, we don't really have much data on Vatra in terms of how they're facing off against other teams, but if there's any changes, as I said, I will be putting it on my community page, giving you guys updates. So in terms of who I think will win this one, then, so for me, I've got to stick with my bias towards EMEA, right? I think that Reply Totem will win, but it'll be an insanely close one. I think it'll be like a 3-2. Okay, so for the third round of 16 matchup, we have AC Milan Clash, which are part of the LATAM South region, against Stamina. So Stamina is one of the most popular teams in terms of support, and I feel like they're really bringing their A game right now in terms of preparation. So we'll start off with AC Milan Clash. And so as you can see, they finished first in the LATAM South region, getting a lot of points. And this is their team right here. They've got a really underrated team. One thing to note about AC Milan Clash is that they actually flew out pretty early. And I'm pretty sure they've scrimmed like the most out of every single team literally at the event right now, which I know doesn't really show in terms of skill, right, but it shows in terms of determination. They're really scrimming hard. So this is one team that really underrated. Again, it'll be another really tough matchup. So in terms of statistics, and so they've won 7, well, they've qualified for 7 monthly finals. They've won 5 of them out of 7, which is pretty insane, and they won the last monthly final. So they've got a 45% scrim win rate, which I think is fairly decent considering they really test themselves in the scrims. I don't see them really scrimming any like tier 2, tier 3 teams. They're really only scrimming the world's teams, so they're really putting themselves up against it right here. So next up we have STMN. So STMN, I feel like a really good team. Sometimes they've been a bit iffy throughout the year, but I think they're a really good team going into the World Finals right now. It feels like they've finally got like the winning formula. They did win their last monthly final, right? They won 2 monthly finals overall and qualified for every single one. So they've got about a 50% scrim win rate, which is pretty standard, you know, especially considering you're not always practicing your own maps, and then also they're testing themselves pretty hard against some of the world teams as well. And one thing to note as well about this is that both Zetas, I won't say who actually predicted on the team, both of them predicted STMN to win, which just goes to show that they're really fancying STMN's chances. You know, when a team like Zeta predicts STMN to win Worlds, you know they've got to be looking good in practices. So for me, this one is a tough one. I feel like if I would have spoke to me a couple of days ago, I would have probably gone with a riskier pick like AC Milan Clash. But as I've been watching scrims, you know, Stamina look really good against Zeta. So I think Stamina should be able to take this one. Okay, so now moving into the final day number 1, round of 16 matchup, we have Stalwart Esports versus Team Queso. So this is one a lot of people are also looking forward to because they're 2 like kind of underdog stories, right? Team Queso, I think they're like 5th in EMEA right now, while Stalwart, they're in a region which are completely dominated, so still a little bit of an unknown how they've really faced off against other World Finals teams that only just arrived in Paris yesterday. They don't really have the best win rate, but I know that Wi-Fi was pretty rough in the hotel, so not too sure how to take the data. They only won 32% of their scrims, which, you know, I'm not too surprised about. I think for me, you know, without any bias looking into it, you know, if I was just to look at these two teams, I would say that Team Queso should have the benefit of the doubt and should be able to get past Stalwart. But I know there's a lot of really strong fans for Stalwart Esports, and I've been seeing it all over Twitter. A lot of people predicting them, but if I was to go with my heart, it has to be Team Queso for this one. So, as I said, Stalwart, I feel like I've really had no competition whatsoever throughout the year. They've won every single monthly final, and that can really hurt a team like Stalwart. Like I'm not saying these guys are terrible players, right? Whenever I say that one team is better than the other, you know, all of these players have got to be insane to reach the World Finals, but for me, I just feel like it really hinders them because they're not really facing off against any other team. You know, the teams aren't really trying much whenever I watch monthly finals. I hardly watch the monthly finals because I just feel the competition is poor, and that will reflect in them because they just can't get better because they're not actually scrimming teams that are as good as them. So that is one thing to bear in mind as well throughout the year, because whereas in other regions, you know, there's other teams that are really strong, and the only way for you to get better is to literally scrim people that are just as good as you, or if not better. So yeah, that's Stalwart basically. And yeah, for them as well, they've also had a few weird roster changes. You know, there was a lot of drama on Twitter like a month ago about a bunch of their players, you know, changing position. And yeah, I just feel like the chemistry is not going to be there with their team. Then we've got Team Queso. They finished 4th in the EMEA, and they've reached every single monthly final and got one win, which was actually a really strong showing. They kind of fell off within the last few months, but then they've been picking themselves up within the last month because you know, I'm casting BBL, which is Brawl League, and they've been doing really well there, getting some really good results against really strong teams in Europe, but also in scrims they've been looking okay. They also won the Belarus tournament yesterday, which again I'm not too sure about because there was a lot of Wi-Fi issues, but they still look pretty strong. They have a 37% scrim win rate, so for me, I think Team Queso should be able to take this one. Okay, so now moving on to my predictions for day one overall, just so it's a little bit clearer for you guys. Basically, there's only day one available on the website, but I believe day two should be available pretty soon. And then, of course, you can't really do the day 3 predictions just yet, I believe, as well. But I think you'll be able to carry on the predictions the whole way through. So, anyways, we have our predictions. So, Zeta 1, I think 95% chance they win it. This one, honestly, like a 50-50 chance. It is pretty hard. I'm going with my heart here, whereas my head and other pros, you know, feel like Vatra have got a really good chance. It really depends on the draft and how they turn up on the day. But Totem, I feel like are looking pretty strong in EMEA right now. This one is a really tough one again, but because of recent performances within scrims, and I've been watching so many, I think Stamina have been really testing the likes of Zeta in scrims, whereas Ace Man and Clash haven't really so much. So I feel like that's a fair reflection. I think Stamina should be able to take this one, and then Team Queso to round things off. So those are going to be my day 1 predictions. Okay, so next up we have the next round of 16 match, which all of these will be day 2. So we have Tribe Gaming EU versus Zest. I feel like I don't need to waste too much time on this matchup. Tribe Gaming EU, I feel like I have a 99% chance of winning this one. Again, no disrespect to Zest, but I think Tribe Gaming EU are just so much better than them right now. You know, in terms of EMEA, they reached 5 grand finals, won 2 of them. They've got like a 60% scrim win rate right now. And of course, I know the players on Tribe Gaming EU really well. I just think there's no chance unless they just get immensely pressurized on LAN, which again, I played with these guys. I don't think they'll be able to kind of be shocked like this. So I think Tribe Gaming EU should be able to take this one. And then they also won the last monthly final, so they're looking really hot. Although the form kind of slumped a little bit in ESL, I feel like they should be able to take this one pretty comfortably. In terms of Zest, they got the 3rd ranking in LATAM South and kind of scraped through it, to be fair. But overall, I feel like yeah, they're not really performing too well in scrims. Again, I'm not too sure about their like connection status. It doesn't matter a lot in terms of whether they can get stable Wi-Fi to play this game. But in terms of scrim results against fellow world teams, they've been getting absolutely stomped. I'll put it on the screen, but we've got a 12% win rate, so this just really doesn't show too well. You know, they've really faring off against Chazmak and Ace Man Clash not very well. They've only went to 1 grand final. yes, so for me, I think this is an easier one. Tribe Gaming EU easily takes it. Okay, so next up, we have Zeta Zero versus Chasmac Brazil. So for this one, again, I feel like Chasmac Brazil, they've been scrimming a lot. One of the most scrimmed teams throughout the whole basically preparation. They arrived really early, just like AC Milan Clash, and you know, they're a really underrated team. It's just unfortunate that, again, you know, this team are facing off against one of the best teams in the world. You know, they've got 2 players on the roster, Zeta Zero, that previously won the World Finals. So yeah, it's basically an impossible task. I feel like it's got to be like a 90% chance of Zeta Zero of winning. Of course, Chasmac can do the impossible, but it's really hard, specifically when you're doing predictions. I don't want to risk it. I don't want to go with the underdog this time around. So Zeta Zero, sorry, have to take this one for me. You know, to finish second in their region up against Zeta Division 1, who on paper are probably the strongest one because they won the recent mid-season invitational. But for Zeta Zero, they reached 5 grand finals. They won 3 of them, and they have a 53% scrim win rate. So everything going in their favor. Whereas Chasmac Brazil, they faced second in Latam, so like AC Milan Clash definitely have the better of them. In scrims as well, AC Milan Clash have been destroying Chasmac, so goes to show maybe there's a little bit of a difference in skill right there. But in terms of monthly finals, they reached every single one, 3 grand finals, and won 2 of them, and they have a 47% scrim win rate. So I feel like if Chasmac faced off against, I don't know, like a lesser team, you know, in Europe, for example, or even NA, they could have had a much better chance. But against Zeta, unfortunately, I think they're going to lose. Okay, so next up, we have Tribe Gaming NA versus Na'Vi, and I keep going back and forth in my head to who's going to win this one. I couldn't call it. I really couldn't call it. This guy, I feel like this one is on you guys. For me, personally, I'll talk about it just after I talk about the stats, but again, it's pretty hard. I probably will go with a bit of a bias towards my region though. So, for Tribe Gaming NA, so they've reached every single monthly final. They got to 5 grand finals and won 4 of them. So, you know, a lot of people still underrating Tribe Gaming NA for some reason, but I feel like they're an insane team. They've got a 55% scrim win rate, so just going to show against fellow world teams that they've got an above average win rate. So now moving on to Na'Vi. So Na'Vi, I feel like haven't had the best of years in EMEA. They did, of course, for the first few months. I think they didn't compete in the first month, but things were a little bit complicated for them. But anyways, they've really capitulated their form really well, and they're a good team going into the World Finals. Like a couple of I think both Zetas, or definitely one Zeta, predicted Na'Vi to actually win the World Finals. They're a really strong team right now, so definitely don't underestimate them as well. They've got the highest win rate in scrims right now at 63%. They're looking really hot, but it goes to translate. Well, there's like a big question mark on whether that translate on LAN. Like, of course, they reached the they've got runners-up last World Finals. They beat us, but they're at the comfort of their own homes. So we're yet to see Na'Vi on a LAN. Can they handle the pressure? We'll have to see. Whereas Tribe Gaming and NA, you know, they beat SK. They looked really hot on LAN last time around. So really depends on whether momentum goes Tribe Gaming NA's way. But for me, my personal opinion, I think Na'Vi will just take this 3-2. Okay, and lastly, for the last matchup of round of 16, SK versus Reconic Esports, actually a team within China region. And I think this one is a 99.9% in favor of SK Gaming. Obviously, there's a tiny chance that Reconic can win, but I don't see it happening. So unfortunately, it's been a really rough time for the China region. You know, a lot of, I don't even know, like there's a lot of up in the air questions about whether they're even going to make it towards the World Finals. And then Nova were actually the team that did win their little tournament to get towards the World Finals. But then, you know, there was implications with Nova's, I think it was Visa or something. And then the only team that could make it were Reconic. So I don't even know I don't even know where to get the results from that tournament. I believe by this, it looks like they didn't even get to the grand finals. But you guys will have to quote me if I'm wrong on that one. But anyways, I just think it's going to be really tough for them. I believe 1 player or even 2 players are actually staying at home. So not everyone will be at the LAN, but still at least a few players from Reconic. But still, SK, you know, the Titans of EU, they'll win this one easily. All right, guys, so now I'm going to run through my day 3 predictions. As I said, you know, there's just no way that I'm going to get every single prediction right. So going into day 3, I'll redo my predictions on Twitter and the community tab. But just in case I get them all right, then follow on with this. But again, this is just my opinion. There's going to be a lot of other opinions. And again, I don't think I'm going to get every single one right. But so you can see right here. So we have Zeta 1 versus Reply Totem in the quarterfinals. So I feel like for this one, again, my heart and my head just says Zeta 1. Zeta 1 just looks so incredibly strong right now. The one thing that lets Zeta 1 down a little bit is their draft, but I feel like as the week goes on, as they scrim more and more against the other teams, they're going to pick up the draft even better, but they can still just make wacky things work. Like, it's definitely not their mechanics. Their mechanics are 100% the best out of every single team here. It's just their draft that might let them down, but they can get away with it because they're just so good mechanically. But against Reply Totem, I just don't think Totem are looking strong enough to beat Zeta 1 right now, which, again, you know, they can prove me wrong. I feel like a team can definitely still upset a Zeta right now. That's one thing I've not mentioned yet in this video, is that the level this year is a lot more equal than it was last year. Last year, it was so evident that Zeta were going to win in practices. You know, they're by far the best team that I faced. And this year, it looks pretty even. A lot of pros saying that, you know, there can definitely be a lot of upsets. But for me, Zeta 1 have to take it if I'm doing purely on what I feel in terms of strongest chances of winning. And then next up we have STMN versus Team Queso. So for me, I feel like this one, clearly STMN have the better of the chances. Team Queso really disappointed in mid-season invitationals. I have not been looking good all year in EMEA. They've just been looking decent. I think Stamina should be able to take this one pretty easily. So that's where you see this matchup right here. So then going into the next matchup, then we have Tribe Gaming EU versus Zeta 0. So I bet you guys are really interested to hear my opinion on Tribe Gaming EU. I don't want to be biased because I still really like these guys. You know, I talked to Drage a ton. You know, I still really rate Tribe Gaming EU. You know, they finished #1 in EMEA, but they have a curse on them. No team in EMEA have actually made it past the first round, who have actually got the #1 seed. So, you know, they could even get that cursed in the round of 16. You know, I was on the receiving end about a year ago, this time a year ago. But against Zeta 0, I think their task is just too hard for them. I think it'll be a really close game, but I think Zeta 0 would just have enough in them to take it. Like, I feel like sometimes that Tribe Gaming have a really good draft against Zeta 0. The weaker out of the Zetas, but I just think they've got it in them to take it through to the next round. But I could be proven wrong pretty easily here. You know, it is tough. It is really just dependent on how it comes down to it on the day. So next up, we have Navi versus SK Gaming. So this one is going to be incredibly hard to predict. Again, these two teams are insane. Navi have got the highest win rate in scrims right now. They're looking absolutely solid. As I said, both teams, I believe, both Zeta teams predicted Navi to win. A lot of people think Navi are going to be the real underdogs in this, and they're looking pretty hot. The only thing that I think will let them down is, you know, their drafts are pretty adventurous, but I feel like sometimes they're a little bit too far-fetched. Like, I feel like they'll go something a bit stupid. I don't know, like, I've seen this a few times. Like, it can work, like a Lou, for example, in Canal Grande. Like, I've seen it work, but sometimes they just go a little bit too out the box, which will catch them off guard against a team like SK Gaming, who are just drilled to be such a well-balanced team. So I think SK Gaming will take that one, but only just. I could easily be wrong with both of these matchups right here. So that's where you see Zeta versus SK. So we have the first one. Both Zetas in the semi-final. You know, I'm pretty much like saying what a lot of people will think off the top of their head. You know, I'm not being too original, but this is just my personal opinion. So Zeta 1 versus STMN. This is going to be a really close one. A really close one. Both Zetas think Stamina have a really good chance of winning the World Finals, and I think they look pretty solid. The thing about Stamina is, again, it can depend how they turn up, right? Because we've seen in ESL that they beat Tribe Gaming on LAN. They're definitely a really good LAN team. They look really strong last year as well. And I scrimmed against Stamina last year, and they're actually one of my biggest surprises. Like, of course, I know these guys are insane, but, you know, they're actually a lot stronger than I thought. You know, Bobby, for example, he is such a strong player when it comes down to the mechanics, and it's pretty hard to really tell in the NA region because a lot of their matches are dependent on ping. So it's unfortunate with an esports. So now it's a level playing field. I feel like they have a really solid chance, but I just can't get it past my head. Like, my heart says Stamina, like, they might cause an upset here, but my head, I'm sorry, Bobby, or anyone from Stamina are watching, I think Zeta 1 will take this one, but it's just so hard to go against Side Tempo. Like, Side Tempo is such an insane player, and yeah, I think it's going to win. And then next up, Zeta 0 versus SK Gaming, it's going to be a really tough one. There's just so many tough matchups. I know you guys are probably going to be upset if I get a few of these wrong, but it's incredibly hard. I'm going with my heart on this one instead, and I'm going to go with SK Gaming because SK, I feel like they're a really strong team right now in scrims. They're looking really solid. They're putting in a lot of reps, and they're facing off against Zeta, which have had some good scrim results against. So I think SK Gaming can take this one, and then we have the grand finals. And so, I mean, I've literally just leaked it right there. Zeta 1, I think are going to take it against SK Gaming. I think, you know, off the top of it, if you was to pick a team, I think it's a bit obvious that everyone's going to go towards Zeta 1. You know, they won mid-season invitationals. They were previous world winners, and they look incredibly strong in practices still. You know, if you're literally talking on paper, I think Zeta will be your champions. But if you don't want to just go the same old original, like maybe in my actual predictions, I'll probably do something a little bit more risky. But in terms of what I think you guys should do to be safe, Zeta 1 are on paper the favorites to win it. But if I was to go with something a bit adventurous, you know, I think there's 4 teams probably that, or even 5 teams that have a really good chance of winning it this time around. I think it's Zeta 1, Zeta 0, SK, Estimen, and Navi. I think they look the strongest right now. In terms of pros opinions as well, I've kind of combined it all, and those are only names that I've heard that have a chance to win worlds. Basically, I heard no shouts of any other teams like Trap Gaming EU, for example. I didn't really hear anyone say Trap Gaming NA, or I heard no one say Totem. So those are going to be the main ones. So that is going to be my final prediction of the bracket. You can take a screenshot. I mean, I'll put it on Twitter as well, probably a couple of hours after I do this video. But that's going to be it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed this one. It's a little bit different considering I'm not a player, right? So that's one thing to bear in mind as well, is that my opinion is going to be a lot less of the pros. If you can somehow get some pro opinions on this, a lot of them won't want to jinx it, or that is the main thing, right? Like in terms of, like, you know, saw last year it did heavily backfire on us and Trap Gaming and NA when they did a tier list. I actually wasn't a part of that because I didn't want to do it, but anyways, like, it can be pretty, like, for me as a spectator, I don't know 100% how strong these teams are. Definitely the best opinions are going to be the pros, and I've just tried to take into account the pros' opinions on this the most, and I still feel like Zeta 1 have the best chance of winning. But it's going to be an insane world finals. I feel like every team near enough has a chance. Like the teams that reached the quarterfinals, I think all of them have a chance of winning the world finals. So yeah, that's going to be it for today's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed this one. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.